All right, now here's the part where I have to introduce you, okay?
Okay. I feel like I was slouching.
I feel like I'm missing something, and it might just be my headphones, but anyway.
I don't know.
We're here with Casey today. Hello, Casey.
Hello.
We're going to be talking about intellectual disabilities and developmental disabilities for people, whether it be children, adults. We've worked mostly with adults,
Yes.
or at least I have.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of both, but mostly adults.
Cool.
When I was in college, we had to go through all of the age ranges. That was.
And what was your degree in college exactly?
So my bachelor's degree was in interdisciplinary studies, which was special education, basically. So I got my teacher certification for early childhood through 12th grade. And then my master's was in educational psychology with an emphasis on low incidence disabilities.
So low incidence meaning like not as much like fighting or like I don't know.
No,
what that means.
it's literally the numbers in the population. So like how often it's occurring.
Oh, okay.
So typically low incidence is more like Down syndrome, Prader-Willis, MS, things like that. And high incidence would be like your ADHD, learning disabilities.
Where does autism fall in that?
Yeah, that's tricky because of the spectrum. So I think technically autism is a high incidence disability these days, and it can change. And I don't remember the exact number. It's like for every 1 in 100,000 or whatever that number is. If it's above that, it's one. If it's below that, it's the other. But in low incidence disabilities, they still talk about autism because even though it's the numbers of the population, it really kind of also boils down to like how much assistance that they need.
Interesting.
And typically,
so you have a lot of chicken wings.
They were good.
They were good. Cajun sauce is just like yeah.
That's why you get plain. That's why I got plain.
That was a good call. I probably should have just eaten the plain. What was I saying? Oh, I saw this statistic. This isn't what I was saying, but I forgot what I was saying, so I'm going to say something else.
Okay.
I saw this statistic yesterday that 1 in 10 households or families actually deal with or support someone that has intellectual disabilities. I don't know what that all entails, but for people out there that maybe you just found out you're having a child and they have an intellectual disability, or you're just now realizing that, you're definitely not alone.
Right.
So let's talk about what it's like, to help support someone with an intellectual disability. And IDD is like a term, intellectual and developmental disability.
Correct.
And so intellectual is like how you think. So when you have an intellectual disability, it's harder for you, takes longer for you to learn, and maybe you won't learn as higher level things as other people without. What's a developmental disability? Is that kind of the same?
Similar. So disability is based off of 2 factors. When we're talking about cognitive disability, which is, in your head, versus losing a limb or a physical disability, that's a whole different genre. So on the intellectual disability side, it's looked at your IQ. So just like you or I might have an IQ test in school, if it's below, I want to say 70, although it's been a while since I've had to look at the actual.
That was in that article yesterday too. That sounds about what I remember.
I want to say under 70, but it's IQ and adaptive functioning, and so it looks both at what's your straight IQ number, so intellectual testing that anyone could do, but then also your ability to adapt to certain situations. So how well you can dress yourself, cook for yourself, take your medication, follow public transportation. And so there's assessments that diagnosticians do that they go through and see like what level people are at, and that's how it's determined. So for example, the reason it's intellectual and developmental instead of just like intellectual is that you can have an IQ over 70 but still have a disability because of your adaptive functioning. So people with autism might fall into that range where they're very intelligent and they've got the IQ, which is normal or sometimes even above normal, but their adaptive functioning is maybe not where it needs to be able to either be independent or they can be independent but maybe need some support. So it's just kind of a whole range, and that's where that comes from.
Interesting. So I was a resident assistant for a while, and a lot of the things I supported the residents with was cooking and chores and that kind of thing. So basically what you just said,
Right.
acute, is that the right word? Acute living functions.
Adaptive.
Adaptive.
Yeah.
Adaptive, right. I've worked here for many, I've worked in this field for many years, and I still am learning a lot today.
Well, and, a lot of this is kind of behind the scenes stuff that you learn in education, but is maybe, you don't need to know it necessarily. You just need to know how to support someone. You don't have to know all the terms and the tests behind it.
And that's a great segue, Casey. What are some tips, and that this is something I do know a lot about, tips on supporting someone with intellectual and developmental disabilities? So real quick, I want to talk about supporting versus caring, or slightly different words, but I think a tendency for people is to care / do things for people with IDDs. So that versus supporting them, helping them do it, and them feeling empowered by doing the task. So do you have anything on supporting an individual versus just being their maid or whatever you want to call it?
I mean, I think that you said it really well. It's really just about letting the individual do as much as they possibly can on their own, and what are the supports that they need to do that. So, for example, maybe someone can do 90% of their shower routine by themselves, but they can't bend down enough to get their legs. And just so maybe they need someone to come in and help with that, or...
So one thing that I would do, this is kind of like a side note, whenever I was supporting someone and I knew they could do something, and I could tell they were wanting me just to do it for them because it was easier, a natural tendency, even for me, the person supporting the individual, was to just, well, fine, I'll just do it. I don't want to have to deal with that. But, to be the better support person, support staff, or just whatever, was to actually get them to do it. And one way I found to get the person to do it is I pretend that I can't do it. So I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And then, I can't open this lid. And well, I guess we can't have the whatever for dinner because no one can open this. And they're like, let me try. And then they get it. So that's this is one of my tips.
Yeah, good. Unconventional, but I like it. There is actually something in our field called learned helplessness. And that can come from a number of different things. Some of it might be past trauma that they've experienced, or just the way that they interacted with the world, but it also comes from that, where it's just, someone sees someone with a disability and they're just like, oh my gosh, I have to help them and do everything for them. And that's really, it feels good to us to be like, oh, I'm helping this person and I'm such a great person by doing that. But it's really not that great, because it isn't empowering, it doesn't teach skills, and it's really kind of robbing that person of the ability to grow and be as independent as possible, and that learned helplessness. And it can either be kind of they've learned, I don't have to do something because people will do it for me, or it could also be, I never learned the skills because nobody ever let me do it.
Interesting.
So definitely encouraging that.
Anyone's goal is here's what I'm getting out of this. Anyone's goal that is supporting, or even just interacting with someone with an intellectual disability or developmental disability, you're actually helping them more by supporting them and helping them do the task themselves if they can.
Absolutely.
Obviously. So,
or adapting the task to something that they can do. Success is measured in very small increments. For everyone, but it's more noticeable maybe in the disability population, where they might need some extra, instead of saying I'm going to go from point A to point Z.
Let's play a game real quick. So you're supporting me.
Okay.
Our goal is for me, I have money management problems. So every week I go to the supermarket and I'm going to spend my allowance or whatever. I'm going to buy whatever. So our goal is for me to be able to check out hand the cash, get the right amount back.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, just normal everyday tasks
Right.
that we would take for granted. What would that look like if I start out not really even knowing the difference between a $1 bill and a $5 bill? And so, how do you get from not really knowing anything to supporting the individual with those small increment steps up to I can check out all by myself and have the receipt know what I did, good, bad?
Right. I mean, it can kind of all happen concurrently, so it's not like you necessarily have to say, like, we're going to sit down and learn the difference between a 1 and a 5. I mean, obviously we would have to do that, but you don't have to just sit at a table and say, we're going to learn a 1 and a 5. You can also do that at home, but then also go into the store and say, I might have to be with you, but I'm going to let you hold your money, and I'm going to let you hand it over to someone else. And then, I might have to help you count the change, but I think all of those things can happen at the same time.
Here's something you saying a lot, and it's kind of, I noticed this being in the field, but something that you might not have caught. So you were basically prepping me, the person, here's what we're going to do.
Right.
Like, this time when we go to the store, normally Casey gives them the money, and they give her the change for my items. Mm-hmm. Now we're going to try, she's going to give me the money, I'm going to give the cashier the money, and they're going to give me the change.
Absolutely.
The next time, the next step up until we get there or not get there. The point is not necessarily getting to that goal, though it would be awesome.
Right.
The point is trying to improve.
Absolutely. So there's a gaining of skills and a retention of skills, and they're both really important, especially as people are aging, to say, and that's, so like every year we do a client's assessment to say, like, money management, cooking, home safety, those sort of things, where are they at right now, and how much assistance do they need in each of those things. And you want to hopefully see improvement, but sometimes it's also just making sure we're not having a loss of skills too.
So for someone with like maybe a child with an IDD, what could, just something around the house, like you don't have to, in the field maybe we have papers and we say, we're going to try to do this and that, but say we're cooking one day, instead of your child being off playing or just sitting somewhere in another room, they could just be sitting or watching in the kitchen. Yeah. And the next step would be them washing the vegetable or something.
Yeah. Picture prompts can be really helpful. Videos. There's actually some studies done, and we've used it here for some of our people, even videos of themselves. So learning a new task. So like maybe I'm learning to cook pasta, and you're helping me do that. And so I'm cooking, taking it out, boiling the water, putting it in the water, taking it off once I've made sure it's loose enough, draining it. I mean, these are all steps, and I might have to learn each one at a time. But maybe we go through and do it one day, and you take a video of me, and then I can watch it when I'm not doing it and kind of remind myself.
This is especially important for people with maybe not, they can't communicate verbally.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, picture prompts are great. Schedules can be really helpful, although you do have to be careful not to over-rely on things too. So there's really no way you can say, like, do these 4 things and it will be helpful for every single, because everyone is different,
Makes sense.
Everyone is. And so it's just kind of playing around with it and seeing what works.
Picture prompts and videos.
Yes.
Interesting. We had when I was a resident assistant, I didn't do this, but it was a great idea and I liked it. They had put pictures of like the plates on that shelf and the pictures of the cups on that shelf. Not only did it help the different staff coming in and out, but it helped the residents know, when I'm putting up my dishes, this is where that goes. So that was really cool.
Yeah.
I think that I would agree that helps a lot.
Yeah. And breaking things down into really small steps can be really helpful. So when you learn to tie your shoes, it might seem like, okay, you go from not tying them and then they're tied, but there could be anywhere from 2 steps to 15 steps. And again, it just depends on that person, where they're starting and what they need to get to.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And again, it's the goal of increasing whatever we said.
Adaptive functioning.
So increasing and retention. What was the word?
Oh, yeah. So gaining new skills and
Gaining new
then
skills
retaining.
and retaining.
Yeah.
Okay, so maybe once you stop gaining so much, then focus on retention.
Absolutely. And again, definitely, in the younger populations, you're hopefully skill building because they're starting out, just like any child with lower level of skills. But at some point in their lifetime, it might transfer. I mean, hopefully we're always learning new skills. And again, that's true for all of us. But in their older years, it might be really that retention of skills.
I'm currently learning the skill of interviewing.
It's great.
It's fun.
You're really skill building.
Oh, thank you.
Hopefully you can retain these skills.
I hope I will too. I have a question real quick before we move on to Special Olympics.
Okay.
So for parents or just support staff, caregivers, everybody out there, including myself, what are some ways to not feel frustrated with, if we have these goals and we're trying to improve, we're trying to retain these skills, but sometimes it doesn't seem like anything's working.
Right.
And you feel, I know one feeling that a lot of people get is, oh, everyone's going to think that I'm doing a bad job because the person I'm supporting isn't improving. So that's going to look bad on me. Mm-hmm. What are some, just trying to know you do the right thing? Do the right thing, first of all, then know you did the right thing and you're trying your best. What they think is out of your hands, I don't know. Do you have anything?
That's definitely a part of it. Again, remembering that success is measured, in inches, not miles. So you might feel like you haven't gained anything, but really look at it, and it's not even necessarily doing it. So for example, with the pasta, if I've gotten to the point where I just cannot take the pasta out when it's done, like maybe I just let it sit in there for another 30 minutes and you have to remind me 6 times how long I'm supposed to leave the pasta in. Well, maybe someday you're only reminding me 2 times, and that is progress. Right, exactly.
Just to point out that I know that can be super frustrating.
Yes.
I told them, even with people without, with elderly, like anyone like that you're having to remind over and over, like, I told them. And that could be frustrating. And honestly, it's okay that it's frustrating. It's good that you don't, show that or like show that in a negative way. Maybe you go to your room and you get frustrated for a second, and then you come back and you're like, okay, well, you need to take this spaghetti out.
Yeah. For anyone with children in general, you're gonna, as a parent of a person with IDD, I think a lot of that's the same feeling that any parent would have. It's just throughout the lifespan of learning new things, and I've reminded you to clean your room 15 times. Who hasn't?
I don't have kids,
and
but
I don't either.
I've worked with, I now teach kids tennis, and I have for a while. I just started back doing that, but there really is a lot of similarities with what you're having to support and constantly reminding, and it might be frustrating reminding the same person of the same thing every time, but just like Casey said, inches and not miles. I think that is probably really good advice. And
documentation can be really helpful. So obviously in a professional setting, it's often required. And so that's one way to say, like, okay, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I know that, and I can show, like, here's what I've done every single day to try to support this person to take the pasta out on time. But I would say potentially even for parents, obviously it has to be reasonable. Like, you don't want to give your whole life over to, you want to be with your children, not documenting your children. But some sort of, even just maybe a little notebook that says, like, I reminded them 7 times today, and I reminded them 4 times today, and then I reminded them 2, like.
And then look back over 3 months, and you're like, oh, they really have made progress.
So it's going to depend on the person, and a lot of people will hopefully have another support network, whether that's individual therapies or the teacher. So it's not just up to the family member to document that, but I would say if you are feeling that way, that might be something that it definitely helps us on the professional side, so I could see how it might be beneficial.
That's really good. And I document stuff that I'm working on, just to focus on, I did this, and so my day was good because I did X, Y, and Z, or my day was bad, I did things that weren't helpful for me getting towards that goal.
Yeah, or people that are super into fitness that mark down, I used, the 10-pound dumbbells for 15 reps today. It's the exact same thing. So you can look back say, like, oh, I really have gotten stronger, or, whatever. And I will say, and kind of a caveat to what I said earlier, I think the experience for parents spans disability and not disability, but just remembering that so I work with adults, and so even though there are some similarities for all ages of people, not to treat them like children.
Right.
So I think that's something that sometimes gets
respect
lost.
their integrity and.
Right. Because even with maybe a lower IQ or adaptive functioning, they still have a lifetime's worth of experience. That is very important and something that has to be respected. And so even though some things might work, whether it's a child or an adult, there is a difference, and that is very important to keep in mind. So I didn't want that to get lost in what we were talking about kids.
That is a very good distinction. I want to talk about Special Olympics before we go.
Okay.
A little switcheroo here. So Casey does a lot of stuff with Special Olympics. She's kind of a big deal. Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
She's been to all over the nation. She's going around the world now. She's going to be a world traveler for Special Olympics. Yeah. So real quick, we have Special Olympics at the local level. Mm-hmm. Then we have state, nationals, worlds.
Yes.
What is the world games?
World Games, yeah.
Yeah. Which was on ESPN last year, I think, and that was amazing.
Yeah.
That was so cool in Seattle, which you
that
attended.
Was National Games.
Oh, that was National Games. That was amazing.
It was.
And Casey led the first paddleboard team of Texas.
Stand-up
so this was the very first year that they did that?
Yes. So
that's pretty awesome.
So some other states have been doing it, and so they're trialing it to see if it'll become a national sport. But Texas had not done it before.
How did your team enjoy it?
They loved it.
So do you see it being a thing someday?
I hope so.
Games? Not just a trial?
Right. So the next national games, which will be in like 3 or 4 years, I've lost track now, but is in Florida.
And they only do it every couple of years?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So the World Games runs very similar to the Olympics. So every 2 years there's either summer or winter games.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
And then national games, I want to say it's like 3. It's not exactly the same. It's a little bit different, but I think it's 3 years.
How do the athletes qualify? Let's start with the bottom. The local level. Mm-hmm. Do you just sign up and go?
Yeah. So you have to have an intellectual disability or a related condition. So related condition, again, meaning maybe the IQ is higher, but the adaptive functioning is not there. It is not just for physical disability. That's Paralympics. Okay. So if they have a physical disability and not an intellectual disability, they would not qualify for Special Olympics. They could do Paralympics. And I don't know barely anything about Paralympics, but I know it's a separate thing. So they have to, they have to have the intellectual disability or the related condition. I think, and I haven't worked with kids for a long time, but I think it's 7 for the local level of like how old they have to be to actually compete.
Age, okay.
They do have like programs for younger kids. I think it's called Young Athletes, maybe even, but they can start like practicing and doing certain things. But for competition, I want to say it's 7 or 8 that they have to be.
Cool.
I could be wrong about that because.
And then to get to the state level, you usually have to go to the local, or is it?
It's not
necessarily
based on ability per se, because that would be really hard to figure out to some degree. So when you enter Special Olympics for a competition on any level, you enter entry scores. And those scores are used, so divisioning is done by ability level, age to a degree, and gender. And so there's a ton of different categories for every sport because you're in these like little divisions of like 3 to 8 people. So to compete at the state level, you just have to have competed at the local level, or area is what we call it in Texas. So it's not necessarily that you had to win, but you did have to compete in order to move up.
And then it's just a matter of getting the resources to travel there and sign up on time.
Yep. Yeah. All of those. Yeah. Do the paperwork, get there. Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah. So anyone that competes in area can go to state. For national and world games, it's you have to have competed at state within a certain amount of time of that nationals, and I don't remember. I don't know if it's 1 year or 2. And then I think it's just like a lottery draw. So the state office chooses people. There are divisions that are called high performance divisions, and those are based off of skill. So, if you're at the top of the divisions and you win that division, then you might go as like a high performance athlete. I think it's high
That's pretty cool.
But yeah.
So they have something for the highly competitive people and something just...
Well, and that's what I really like about Special Olympics is at any level, there's something there for you to do. And pretty much every sport has the sport itself and then individual skills. So Calvin and I have experience with this because he was our basketball coach.
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
My assistant coach, who has an IDD, gave me an award for the best coach of the year.
Yes.
I was...
Well deserved.
It made my life. I have it up in my room. It's
That's
still...
awesome.
It was amazing.
But yeah, so Calvin did the actual basketball team who were playing just 5-on-5 basketball, and I had a group that was doing individual skills. And so those people maybe aren't quite ready to be in the full game yet because they haven't quite developed those skills yet, or maybe they have a health reason that they can't participate. So like one of our older gentlemen had fallen in basketball the year before and then just didn't really feel comfortable because he had hurt his shoulder. But then also it could be a behavioral issue, so or just a sensory issue, like I don't like people touching me, so
Makes
basketball
sense.
might be a minefield of people coming at me. So just all different reasons why they might not be able to compete in the full sport, but there's still real competition for them to do.
So just for example, in basketball, competing, you have 5-on-5 or maybe 3-on-3 basketball, and you have a team, people wear jerseys, whatnot. The skills, it's more you just show up as an individual,
right? And
you dribble around cones, or you shoot baskets, or you pass the ball.
They'll take components of the sport and break it in, kind of like we talked about earlier, breaking it into smaller pieces. So yeah, it's a dribble, it's a free throws, it's a passing accuracy. And the goal is, some people might be in individual skills forever, but maybe by learning some of these skills, then they can kind of move up. So they're getting the pieces of the sport, and then they can hopefully someday bring that together and do the full sport.
That's cool.
Or not, just depending.
Whatever you want to do.
Right, but the competition is still there. I mean, that's why they division, to make sure it's good competition. So it's not one person completely blowing out another, but everybody is really going to have to go there and do their all in their division to get that award. The rules are very strict. I mean, I think a lot of people see Special Olympics and they're like, oh, they're just going to hand out medals to anyone that walks in the door, and that's really not the case. I mean, it is good sports and good competition. If you're in bowling and you go over the foul line, you're not getting that point.
I was amazed by all that, and just the community around it. Like, there was a lot of people, even at we started at local level and then regional level, and just like the amount of people and I don't even know, like the seriousness that was there. It really took me back to high school when I was on the basketball team, and I was like, let's do this. We're competing. Like, even though we were in the lower divisions, we were already there to compete.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
It was a lot of fun. And so was everyone else.
Yeah. And I think that's sometimes what gets lost, and what would be nice for people to know is, that's not, again, there's something for every level. So there's certainly the people that do just want to kind of show up and whatever, do their thing, and that's fine. But there's also a very high level of sportsmanship and competition that goes into it.
It was really cool to me to see how much pride everyone there had. Like, that was...
Yes.
It was... It rubbed off on me.
Yeah.
I was like, this is cool.
It is. And it's been cool to see it at all the different levels, and I've been really lucky to be able to do that. And
that's awesome. How do you go from the local up to the national as a volunteer, like what you do, or coach, or
an application?
Well, there you go.
Yeah. So I think for nationals, it's kind of a luck of the draw. For World Games, you actually have to interview and put in your application. And
she passed.
I did it. Yes.
She's going to the World's Games in Abu Dhabi.
Abu Dhabi, yeah, 2019.
That is cool.
Yes, I'm super excited.
Well, congratulations,
Thank
Casey.
you.
And thank you for sharing all of your knowledge, even to me who has worked in this field for 8-10 years and didn't know a lot of this stuff.
Well, thanks for your
for
interest in
educating
it.
me. Yeah, you're welcome anytime.
Goes both ways.
Awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.